Hello, I'm Don Moores, and welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. Recent weeks, Governor Hogan made an announcement about the construction of toll lanes on I-495, I-270, and the Baltimore-Washington Parkway. This was a very, very big surprise to many Marylanders. Brian Karem, CNN political analyst, we're announcing that today, and the executive editor of the Sentinel, Montgomery County's best newspaper, has this story and so much more. On the first Monday in October, the new Supreme Court session began. Mariana Cordier, a local attorney, is here to explain what some of the issues are and what promises to be a most interesting year at SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States. Washington Area Transit, or Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, WMATA, has had challenges in the last several years, challenges that have been shown and discussed in the press and elsewhere, but it's working hard to meet them. Charlie Scott, Senior Government Relations Officer for WMATA's Maryland office, will review some of those things that have happened and what WMATA's future plans are to address them. Montgomery County Public Schools, MCPS, is asking all of us, the residents of Montgomery County, for help in planning next year's calendar, especially in light of the shortened school year as a result of opening up Ocean City for an extra week. Jane DeWinter will explain the difficulty of fitting classroom instruction and days off in the allocated number of days against political realities of trying to meet Eastern Shore's desires. Brian Karem.
Don, good to see you.
Good to see you too. What's going on? By the way, first of all, congratulations on the CNN gig.
Thanks.
You're perfect.
Well, I have a mouth.
Well, and again, for those who haven't followed you this year, you've played such a huge role in the White House press office and coming down. You've made all of us in Montgomery County proud. Whether people agree with you or not, it still has been fantastic that what we've seen as a local element, and your national focus as well, has been present to really call the White House to
you have to kind of call them on their stuff every once in a while, or they'll really give it to you. But it's been difficult. It's one of the more difficult roles I've ever played in the press, and it's one of the most difficult administrations I've ever covered, and I've covered everyone since Reagan. So it's, for all of us, it's been an eye-opening experience.
Well, let's go from Washington to Annapolis.
Sure.
We've got the governor made this big announcement, along with the comptroller.
Yes.
That we're going to have toll lanes, hot lanes or whatever on I-270, on I-485, 495, and the Baltimore-Washington Parkway. But certainly, we've got lots of traffic.
Yes, we do. And we have problems because we've had problems with Metro, commuting. So, but Metro wouldn't be able to handle all the commuting anyway. But nonetheless, so you have what they want to do is widen the roads and give us, more lanes to travel in. They just want to charge us for them. So the idea of a freeway is now a toll road.
Where are they going to widen the roads to? Because, if you look at 495 and 270, there's not a lot of room to, unless you're going to condemn a bunch of homes.
Well, that's an option, and then building up is an option where they've had problems with widening roads before they put elevated lanes in over the old lanes. They haven't studied it. There's been no, there's been no massive study to determine how they're going to do it. He's just announced that he's going to do it. And the real problem with the toll road idea is, you used to have toll roads to pay for the road. Then I've actually lived through where they've taken the tolls out because the roads were paid for. Not anymore. The toll roads are in perpetuity, and they're to make money for the state. And in essence, it's class warfare, because if you can afford to take the toll road, you can, and if you can't, you won't.
But it's not just the state. Let's remember
it's
that
state, federal, and local. Yeah.
No, but also the contractors.
Yeah.
It's because most of them now are being operated by private sector entities.
Yes,
so
absolutely. Well, but the state, local,
gets a little bit.
Gets a cut. Yeah.
But that's what I was going to ask. Is he suggesting like the widening be completely, contracted out so that it's completely within the private sector, or just that the state would build it?
And they also have to go around. Don't forget, they've also got to go around to do this. They've got to actually go to the federal government, because these are federal roads, and if the state he wants the state to take them over. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing either. They're looking at widening roads and providing more travel area for commuters as a revenue enhancement project, when it should be a public service project. And that's, I think, the real problem. and all the rest of it, where you put it in private contractors or where they're making something and the state's making a little less. All of that is a function of the fact that they've decided to take something that should be a public service contract and turn it into a revenue enhancement
And
project.
considering the amount of taxes that we already pay, because, you know, the taxes in Maryland are not cheap, that we should not have to additionally contribute in such a way that we're going to forego the federal funds if the state
Right.
takes over the roads and all the rest. I mean,
And it's a
what-
driving tax,
and
what
it's
it
a
boils
driving
down to.
tax,
And then,
yeah.
you know, hey, you want to wait 2 hours in traffic? Don't pay. Hey, we got this special lane for you over here. If you don't mind paying a little extra, we'll get you there on
those
I
who
don't
can
know if I
afford
want
it.
to
Well,
look like
and
Virginia.
given the fact that we've got multiple transit projects in Montgomery County as well as in the state, like the Baltimore, the Red Line, that has had difficulty getting funding or
Right.
back and forth and blah 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 blah. What does it say when so he's proposing this big new thing for roads, where we've got all this transit projects that we want
Well,
to
it's
move forward?
independent. It's a different budget, and it's independent of what they would do with Metro. And Metro also has federal, and 6 different taxing entities contribute to Metro. So that's a little different. This is part of the larger gestalt of providing better ways to commute. And it's
45
not a
seconds
bad.
left.
It's not a bad idea. It's the fact. It really boils down to the fact that you want to turn public service into revenue enhancement. Where I wish they would spend the money and go through and audit, the budget and figure out where they could save a little bit. But
But what does this also say about respect for Montgomery County and
none.
Prince George's County?
There's absolutely no
there was-
respect for Montgomery. Who's going to foot most of this bill?
And-
People in Montgomery and Prince George's County.
And even with the traffic, I mean, much of the increase in traffic comes from Howard County, Frederick County, all passing through on the roads, which is it's federal highways, but this is really a state issue.
Well, it's a federal issue
Federal
because, as
issue,
you
right.
said,
Right.
it's not just the people in Montgomery County that are using the roads. The people who live elsewhere trying to get to the district
Right.
or traveling up and down the
East Coast.
north-south corridor on the eastern seaboard. So it should be condensed. It should be re-examined, and the governor should perhaps not make us pay a toll.
And when you bring this up on CNN as a federal issue, political issue, please let us know.
After we get done with the president.
Can't wait for you to come back.
Thanks.
Brian. Mariana Cordier, welcome back.
Thank you, Don. Thanks for having me.
Your keen legal mind here at work
Thank you.
here. And we go to the Supreme Court. We've dealt with so many issues with you. Let's talk about the Supreme Court.
Well, the Supreme Court is full. We've got all the justices. We're not shy one.
What are some of the issues that we think are
So
going to be
we're
coming up?
going to look at issues about the travel ban. Everyone knows about the travel ban, but the one that's more subtle but very important is the gerrymandering.
Let's go through. I want to, before we get into this, but can you just we've got travel ban,
So
we've got gerrymandering, we've got there's that Baker.
There's a baker in
Same-sex
Colorado
issues.
who refused to
Right,
bake
keep
a
going.
cake for same-sex marriage. We have an immigration issue that's come up about permanent residents who are being deported because of a prior criminal offense. Their right to not be held in
Indefinitely.
prison indefinitely.
Right.
And then there's the cell phone privacy issue. Many don't know if you're not part of a criminal case, but law enforcement has been utilizing towers to ping the phones, to track the pinging of the phones of people who are allegedly committed a crime, to place them.
Let's go back to that gerrymandering real
Right.
quick. Tell us a little bit about the gerrymandering, because
So the
Maryland
case
is
comes out
known
of
as
Wisconsin.
gerrymanders.
I'm surprised the case didn't come out of Maryland, but it came out of Wisconsin. And it
Could
was
have come out of here real easy.
Yeah, I mean, but Wisconsin they gerrymandered. They redrew the lines so that the voting and the candidates favored the Republicans to the Democrats.
So as I
in
understand,
such a way.
they packed the
they
Democrats
packed-
all in one district.
Yes, they
and
did.
then they spread the and then Republicans are spread out so they could be 51%
Right.
in the rest of the
They
place.
get over the majority
Right.
just, and so they won more seats, kicked out the Democrats that were, in those seats, and now they're the majority. And you kind of saw a little bit of that when, Trump won, Wisconsin, and so the Supreme Court has to take that into consideration. And one of the things that they were looking at is, well, how can you really justify that gerrymandering really had an impact on the elections? And so the arguments that the court's going to be hearing is what.
Well,
They were heard, yeah.
Yeah, the problem is both the Democrats and the Republicans scream at each other for gerrymandering.
Right.
Neither one of them want to see this case before the Supreme Court because they're afraid it's going to come against them one way or another. They talk a big game about it, folks, but the bottom line is the last thing we want to do is stop gerrymandering districts
Because it's
in their interest.
Because
And it's
it's
an
in the
incumbent's-
incumbent's interest,
Yeah,
yeah.
Right.
But there's other issues that go along with just the gerrymandering and vote representation. I mean, I think that in conjunction with the things that have been done to restrict voting rights,
Right.
it's even a bigger issue.
Right,
But that's
the
not before the
gerrymandering is
Well,
not
no.
being, you know, it's
Right.
not being heard before the Supreme Court. But you know, yes, there are going to be issues.
Interesting quote from the Republican legislator who really blew the whistle on what was going on. He was shown the secret maps
Right.
behind the door, and he
Right.
came out and said, this is just wrong. He said, you know, elections should be about constituents selecting their elected officials.
Right.
What we have now in Wisconsin and other places is the elected officials
Or choosing
selecting their voters.
constituency,
Yes, that's exactly
And
what it
that's
is.
just, and that's
And that
just,
happens here in Maryland.
Oh,
And the
it
biggest
happens
question
in
is how
Montgomery
are,
County.
well, Maryland is one of the worst. You look at it, honestly, you look at the districts, and they look like ink block tests. I mean, they're non-contiguous in some cases.
oh, they're officially contiguous.
Yeah,
but
they're
that's-
officially
Exactly. They have to be.
contiguous, but they're non-contiguous.
And the League of Women Voters has done a lot. When you have to go by kayak or canoe,
Yeah.
and the Chesapeake to get the continuous.
Yeah.
So we've got only time maybe for one more. So
Okay.
what's another issue? I like the cake issue. And
Well, so the cake issue is that a cake artist, he calls himself, refused to make a cake for a same-sex marriage, and he said that for religious reasons. And so the issue is whether or not he discriminated against the couple. And so that's the issue that's going to be before the Supreme Court. And we have to take into consideration that the court, a swing vote, is Kennedy, and Gorsuch, I think it's Gorsuch, is a good replacement for Scalia because he's as conservative as Scalia.
More so.
Or more so. So we'll see. We don't know, but we'll see. So the question of how that may come down, you have 5 conservatives and 4 liberals, if you will. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. No one has a real good way of predicting what can happen. It just a lot of big things are going to happen out of the Supreme Court.
The big
30
thing to look
seconds
at the big thing to look at in that is if they decide to choose religion over free speech.
Right.
If it's religion versus the Constitution and the Constitution loses, folks, that's trouble.
That is a lot.
And
of trouble.
that is that's the key to this issue. It's not that you have the right to worship. Everybody's got the right to worship the way they want. You don't have the right to deny me my civil rights because you don't like the fact that I'm gay.
Right.
you as the person in this, you agree with him?
I do. I do.
right.
He's very eloquent. That's why he's the CNN contributing analyst.
Well, that and a quarter will get you a cup of coffee.
Fair enough. Thank you very much. Thank both of you very much. Looking forward to the second half with you all, and we'll be right back. We have to take a break right now.
What flavor cake do you want?
And we're back. Charlie Scott, welcome. I think it's your first time on our
Yes,
show.
thank you for having me.
So you are following in the footsteps of our great political leader and WMATA legislative director, government relations, Gene Cunahan.
That's right.
You know, I don't say it, but his sister used to teach me back in middle school, and Gene Cunahan, a great man, and I think you've got such an important job to play, such a difficult or job to hold, and work that's so important. WMATA, not just vis-a-vis Baltimore when we're looking at Maryland, but then vis-a-vis Fairfax and Alexander, the district. How do you do your job?
It can be challenging, but it's always something new every day that we face at Metro, so that keeps it interesting for me. As you mentioned, Gene retired about 11 years ago, so I've been at Metro just over 10 years.
Right.
And it's been a great opportunity to see the system evolve over time and to work hard with our elected officials.
Now, we see WMATA, you talk about Metro.
Yep.
Give us just a 30-second thumbnail of what the empire is.
What the empire is.
The empire.
Well, every day
I'm
we
concerned
every
for
day
him.
we operate. We provide over 1 million trips to residents of the entire region. That's over 600,000 on Metro Rail, over 400,000 Metro Bus, and we also provide Metro Access service for the paratransit for the disabled community. And it's a amazing system that we have the honor to to run, and I think it's been a great asset to the whole region and especially parts of Montgomery County.
Right, and the red line, I mean, is Montgomery County's line
Yes.
in so many ways.
Yes.
So you, and you're dealing with Annapolis primarily.
Right, Annapolis, and then also Upper Marlboro, Rockville as well. Again,
So tell us, one challenge, and then open this up. Tell me your arguments why Metro, when Baltimore seems to be the focus of so much of Maryland, even though Montgomery County, as we all know, is the economic engine of the state, and Baltimore. I mean, Baltimore is a place where it gets a lot more in. Montgomery County is pushing resources out. So it seemed to me that we would be the #1 priority for the state. The easier Montgomery County moves, the more money comes into the state, the more that Baltimore can be assisted through the year. So tell me, what arguments seem to work when you're?
well, that argument definitely works with legislators in Annapolis. I think legislators understand the importance of having an effective transit system, both in Baltimore as well as here in the DC region. I get the sense that legislators understand that in this region, probably more so than in Baltimore, people have a lot of options of how they commute around, and it puts the pressure on Metro to continue to deliver good service, because many people, have the option of driving, even if 270 can be a bit congested at times.
A bit.
So we always have to have the service as
what's-
good
I
as it
have
can
just
be.
2 questions for Metro.
Two.
We have just
We just got 2 minutes. So I got to be really quick because
they're
everybody
quick
else has questions here.
2 questions for Metro. We just finished a 5-part series. When is Metro going to be more open with the public so we actually know what's going on? Because we have filed 20 some odd different FOIAs, or your all's version of FOIA, and have never gotten them answered, and we're not the only ones to have a problem. The Washington Post, Baltimore Sun have also had problems. And the second question is, what is back to good?
So back to good actually came from our customers. We want to be the best.
As an
system
editor, I just found it annoying.
in the world. But our customers basically told us, don't oversell what you can accomplish in the near term. So that's the back to good. We do want to become a world-class system. I think we were a world-class system when we opened 40 years ago, and that's our ultimate goal. But the more immediate goal is to get the system back to good.
And
you
about
promised
opening up.
And you promise that you'll work on that when you get back to the office?
Absolutely,
All right.
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, no, one of the questions that I have is what in the legislative session in Maryland are you looking for from the legislators for Montgomery County? What are you looking to improve? Because the Metro, it took 2 weeks ago and I waited 8 minutes.
Keep going.
Right.
Because it wasn't running.
So, right now, we talked about Governor Hogan's transportation proposals. He's also proposed for Metro $500 million in funding with even shares coming from DC, Virginia, and the federal government.
And we know how
So
that'll go.
It's going to be a heavy lift. So we want legislators to
We've been down that road before many times.
thank the governor, express our gratitude, and also urge him to continue leading on this issue around the region. So many different competing ideas, but we want our elected officials, especially those in leadership, to be leading on it.
Jan, we're going to jump in your time a little bit, but go ahead and ask a question. Yeah.
I wanted to ask because I know Metro's had funding issues for ages, and so there's periodically talk coming up about how Metro workers are basically the highest paid transit workers in the region, and I don't know how large that region is. Is that true? What kind of a role does that play?
So actually, Governor McAuliffe had a study done recently by Secretary Ray LaHood. So they actually looked at what do our employees earn compared to others. It wasn't as out of line, or basically it was right in line with other transit systems.
Okay. Well, Charlie, I hope you come back
Absolutely.
because Gene came back.
Okay.
So we need you to come back
All
again.
right. Very good.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate it. And good luck with the legislative session coming up.
Thank you.
Jane, welcome.
Thank you.
So we go from contentious issues to contentious issues.
No,
A little potentially.
potentially, yes.
So we pushed the start of the school year back to make room for more tax revenues coming into Ocean City.
Well, presumably.
Or
that's the hope.
We're
I
trying to figure
guess,
out. I know you're
yes,
trying.
yeah.
I know you're trying to get to the bottom of it with the governor's office and the comptroller's office. What's the sense around the county, both from the school system and from parents and teachers, in terms of, is this something we should do again? Or do we need to get back to having kids in the classroom?
Right. Well, so this is the first year where this has been playing out, and the school system addressed it by front loading before school started a lot of the professional days that used to be interspersed through the year. And what parents are going to see this year really is just more half days. So,
Right.
you know, but you still have a spring break, we still have the same winter break, we still have the same holidays off. When the Board of Education and MCPS staff went to lay out the calendar for the 18-19 school year, basically, given when a school has to start after Labor Day, has to be completely done by June 15th, you have state mandated holidays, et
Not a lot of
cetera.
options.
Right, not a lot of options. And so they came down and basically they have to fit what they would like to do, eight days into 6 days. And so the things on the table are some professional days, are Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah,
Right?
or a shorter spring break. And so,
So you think there's a hidden agenda, or are you saying
no,
there's
I just think that really they don't, you know, they've
Well,
got.
but that's interesting because, you know, and doing family law, I run into school schedules for the visitation, and Howard County used its own budget to start, I guess what they call on time, which was the week before Labor Day. Is that something that Montgomery County would consider?
Well, Montgomery County asked for a waiver and they didn't get
Get
it.
it,
And I
yeah.
don't know,
No, Howard County out of their pocket paid for that week.
so they didn't get school reimbursement, they didn't
No.
get state reimbursement for
No.
that week. I have
but
not
they
heard.
did not want to flex.
No, they haven't asked that.
Right,
They
asked
have
that,
not
yeah.
asked that in Montgomery County. That is an option, but it hasn't been exercised.
Right.
What is on the table that I've heard is what you've discussed, and the
Right.
question remains: is there a hidden agenda to doing it, which everybody
I
hopes
don't
do you
there's
think?
not?
we
I
should
don't think
cut
there's a
religious
hidden, I don't
holidays.
think there's
That's-
a hidden agenda, but what the school system has done is they've put just some examples. They're very, you know,
Neutral
clear in saying that none of these are what we necessarily are going to adopt or whatever, but these are
Right.
just sort of some variations.
Floating
and
them
so
out
if
there.
you look at the school system's website and their calendar site, they've got 5 options, and so you can look at, or I mean, they've got 5 possibilities, but there could be infinitely more. And then there's a comment box, and I think because it is, you know, okay, weighing Jewish
But
holidays
why even
off
put it on
versus
the?
spring
Why
break.
even put it on the agenda?
think it
Why
should
even
be
put
on-
it out there?
Yeah.
I mean,
agree.
by
I
putting
think
it
it's
out
a
there,
little
the
bit
question
of
is.
CYA. I don't. I mean, when
No,
you're
but
talking
when
about
you
hidden-
No,
even,
when you
when
put
you
the
even put in a proposition of cutting religious days, so what? The Jewish kids are not going to get education,
Right.
whereas everyone
Whoa,
else.
whoa.
Well, wait
Are you
a
guys
minute.
not in politics? This
Yes.
is
No,
fantastic.
but
If
I
you-
would say
we're going to
that
get rid of this
it's
stupid
but-
decision with Ocean City.
But the
I'm
Jewish
just asking the
holidays
question.
are really less
great.
about Jewish students having the day off, because that's the same thing with
Don't
you know,
go
Asian
there.
students.
Yeah.
No, I know that,
Don't
but
go
it's
there.
really more about the fact that there are so many teachers who would be out. So
Right.
if you're looking at
It's
10
about
to 15%
respecting
of your
religion, but
staff,
that's
Yeah.
right.
that's the
I mean,
issue.
so it's officially that.
yeah, but respecting the religion, following up, I mean, what's certainly the Muslim communities and others have said,
Sure.
we want to have our religions.
Right.
Recognize.
thing
And,
too.
and,
So-
and they're just sort of, in a way, the school system is kind of lucky that Eid is in the summer, so they don't even have to play with that one
now,
on the
but
calendar.
it moves.
But,
Right,
right,
yeah.
exactly, it moves. And so the bottom line is that, I
I'm a
mean, in
Zohar
my
age kid,
opinion,
I want-
15
if you
seconds left.
want,
I'm a
if you
Druid.
want kids to be educated, and you want staff who,
Mm-hmm.
know what they're doing and get kind of like buffed up throughout the year, you can't put these artificial limits on the start and the end date.
You're right. Well, unfortunately, we have an artificial start and end date and time with this show, which is where we've come to. Jane, that was great. Thank you very much. Charlie, nice first show. Wonderful.
you.
Thank you all for joining me today, and thank all of you in the viewing audience for joining us for this week's edition of Montgomery Week in View. I'm Don Moores, inviting you to join us next week at this very same time.
Dun, 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 dun.